Hey all, Hibber here. So today I'm looking at 3 reasons why you need to play Divinity Original Sin if you have finished Baldur's Gate 3. So don't forget to subscribe, right? Because this is going to be a good video. So I'm pretty sure almost everyone in the world has played Baldur's Gate 3, maybe not finished it, but definitely played it. It's one of the best games ever made. It's absolutely fantastic. So this video is in no way trying to take away from that fact. It is just like letting you know that if you liked Baldur's Gate 3, which I'm sure you do, then there's plenty of other stuff out there made by the same company, Larian, and the same team pretty much. So, if you get a little bit too much of all the Dungeons and Dragons stuff and, rolling dice all the time, which I think is probably the worst, or not the worst, but the weakest part of Baldur's Gate 3, then I'm going to show you the 2 preceding games that share a lot with Baldur's Gate 3 and are, in my opinion, slightly better games actually, although Baldur's Gate 3, like I said, is amazing. So the games I'm talking about are Larian's Divinity Original Sin, the first game in that series, at least in the Original Sin version, and then of course Divinity Original Sin 2, considered by many people as the best game in the world. So the first thing I want to talk about, and the big difference in these games, is the crafting. Because in Baldur's Gate 3, there is, yes, there is a little bit of crafting. I mean, you can do potions and alchemy, but it's not very impressive. Like, it's not really this game's focus, and that's a bit of a shame if you like to craft things, which I do. And of course, there is a few weapons you can craft, but it's not really a thing. It's kind of part of the story. Is not something that you go out and do. While on the other hand, in the Divinity games, crafting is a massive part of the game. It's all part of the thoughts you take before you start playing, like what kind of character do you want to build, what do you want to be good at, because you can't just craft, like you need to be good at it, so you have to have skill points in the right areas, and of course it gets more difficult as the more interesting stuff you want to craft. So this is just an example here where you take a long branch and you combine it with a knife and you're able to make a short stick, for example. Like there's so many ways that you can craft things in Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. You can create your own weapons, you can imbue them with new abilities or change, like for example, which element they use. And you can keep doing that as you rise in level, so it's easy to always have gear that's perfect for your character and play style. So this is one of the big differences between Baldur's Gate 3 and the Divinity games, and it's a bit of a shame it's not more prevalent in Baldur's Gate, because it's one of those things that, in my opinion, makes Divinity 1 and Divinity 2 superior to Baldur's Gate, simply because of this added flexibility here, where you don't have to always rely on drops. You can, craft your own stuff. Alright, next up we have combat, and Baldur's Gate 3 is more focused on being a flexible game, where compared to Divinity you are able to actually escape combat a lot more often than you can in the Divinity games, probably 10 times more. There's only a few fights where you have to actually fight. If you have a good, a character with high deception, for example, or persuasion, you can talk your way out of most stuff in Baldur's Gate 3. And again, it happens with the whole dice roll screen here, which again I don't like. I just want this dice roll to be done in the background, and the game will tell me immediately if I was successful or not. I don't have to see the dice. I don't think that belongs in a console game. In a tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, obviously, but in here it's kind of unnecessary. I mean, some people are going to relish in the fact that you don't always have to fight. But I think fighting is one of the most amazing systems ever created, and the system in Baldur's Gate 3 is very similar to the Divinity games, except for the fact that you are not able to really string as many combos together in Baldur's Gate 3 as you can in the Divinity games. And that's because of the Dungeons and Dragons rule set, where you are pretty much allowed to only have one action per round. I know it's a little bit simplified here, but that's really what's happening. So you can attack once, and after that, you pretty much are, you're restricted to moving. And I mean, yeah, that's, it creates a different flow to the combat. But if you compare Baldur's Gate 3 combat to Divinity Original Sin's combat, well, the Divinity combat is just far more interesting and intricate because you can attack 2 up to 3 times even if you have the right build. And also the difficulty in the Divinity games is way higher. It's much higher. Like Baldur's Gate 3 is a piece of cake compared to Divinity, especially Divinity Original Sin. Like these games are difficult. So if you haven't played them before, even if you played Baldur's Gate 3, play them on the easiest Explorer mode. Trust me on this one. Another combat aspect from Divinity that's taken a bit of a backseat in the Baldur's Gate 3 game is the use of elements, and these play a huge role in the Divinity games, and combining them and nullifying them is really a main part of the gameplay. And so is the use of surfaces and clouds. And as you can see here, for example, I'm doing 2 attacks in one round here, which I was saying before. It just allows you to honestly have more fun. I think the combat is more fun doing that, because you don't have to wait turns to pull off your incredible feat. You can do it in one turn, and it's just more satisfying. So if we go back to elements and surfaces again, I mean, they are present in Baldur's Gate 3, but it's to nowhere near the degree that of the importance that they have in Baldur's Gate, in Divinity 1 and 2, where one mess up with surfaces, like for example in this example here, and you pretty much have to restart the battle. And the combinations you can pull off with this stuff here is also really satisfying. And one of the best parts of the Divinity games, it really is. And it's also why most people choose to play a character with some sort of magic in Divinity, because it's just a lot more fun. For example, doing stuff like setting enemies on fire and then afterwards having it rain on them, and then use ice magic to freeze the rain so they all fall on their butts, and then you can easily take them out while they are incapacitated. It's strings like these very satisfying plays here that are sort of missing from Baldur's Gate 3, I think. And of course, some people prefer it that way. I don't. I much prefer the little bit more intricate combat that's present in the Divinity games. But again, this is not, saying anything negative about Baldur's Gate 3, because in that game they chose to tone down this aspect and pretty much focus more on, the whole role play segment, more on the story, more on flexibility, and I like that too. But if I had to choose, I would say that Divinity went probably down the better route for me. Alright, the last area where Divinity thoroughly kicks Baldur's Gate 3's butt is in the multiplayer area, because this is just pulled off much better in the Divinity games. Doesn't matter if you play Divinity 1 or Divinity 2, the multiplayer is excellent, and there is a particular reason for that. That reason is primarily the inclusion of a skill in both Divinity games, doesn't matter which one you pick, called Lone Wolf. So if you're playing local couch co-op with someone at home, like you're both watching the same TV, playing with controllers on the same PlayStation or Xbox, if you pick the Lone Wolf trait for each of your characters, that means you only have 2 characters in the games. You cannot have companions, but those 2 characters are way more powerful to make up for the missing companions. Now, this is not present in Baldur's Gate 3, and I don't understand why. Because if you're 2 people, you just want to play together, right? Like if you're a single player, sure, you can manage your whole party of 4 people, that's fine. But if you're 2 players, you don't really want to waste time, fiddling around with a party and also having to rest and stuff like that. It's just not something that encourages, multiplayer fun. Like Divinity games do this much better. So you just have 2 characters in the game, right? And you just have to worry about, outfitting that one character. And it also it kind of enforces the roleplay segment in the multiplayer here, because you only have one character, which is assumingly the one that you care about and you've created yourself. And even though you play multiplayer, you still have that connection with your character. Not like in Baldur's Gate, where you have to worry about the whole party. Well, you don't have to. You can play Baldur's Gate, just 2 players, but you're not going to get any additional powers, which makes it a little bit difficult sometimes and not really worth the trouble. So that's definitely kind of a missing part of Baldur's Gate 3, I think, because it does have the split screen, it does have the multiplayer. It is just missing that one lone wolf mechanic. So that's my take on Baldur's Gate 3 and why you should, if you love Baldur's Gate 3, you should definitely, no question about it, you should download Divinity Original Sin 1 and Divinity Original Sin 2, and you should play the first one first, obviously, and then the second one. And they are just as long as Baldur's Gate 3, if not longer. And like I said, some things in Divinity is actually better than Baldur's Gate 3, although the whole story aspect is there, but it's not as intricate and fleshed out and flexible as in Baldur's Gate 3. But on the other hand, you get better combat, you get better action, more crafting, and if you play local co-op, you're going to get a better experience overall. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you disagree and or if you agree, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you out there.